Molly, I appreciate so much. People have no idea what we went through to make this call happen. This is only our second
Well,
attempt today to make it work.
I'm so happy to finally be here.
So there's an interesting story about how we came to be on this video together. But first, I'd like you to meet my friend and student and confessed people nerd, Molly Rouse. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Well, I always have trouble introducing myself. I'm never sure where to start. So I usually say that I am a people nerd. I love trying to figure people out. I always joke that I collect coffee mugs and introverts because people are I love people, especially difficult people to understand or kind of puzzles and that kind of thing. I've always been fascinated by human behavior, which is probably why I love marketing so much. All the things having to do with the psychology of everything you write, everything you say, and your word choices. So my biggest kind of expertise is that I help coaches and trainers of all different types and all service businesses really deeply figure out their audience and who they are, how they think, what they really want, the words that are in their head, and how that might be different from the creator or the coach or the trainer themselves, and how the words that they use might not be the things that they want their audience to actually hear, and how to figure that stuff out. So that way they can create better offers and get more yeses and all of those great things that we do with copywriting and everything else that we do in marketing. So all the marketing psychology stuff, influence and persuasion, mental triggers, those are all the things that are fascinating that I love helping people with. A lot of my audience is professional dog trainers because I myself had a dog training business in the past. So I know dog trainers and I know their audience. So it's easy for me to help them with the human side of their dog business and help them with all the marketing things, creating their programs and prices and copywriting and sales skills and all those great things. So that's pretty much it. That's what I do.
You are an incredibly complex and fascinating person.
Thank you. I'll take it as a compliment.
It was meant as one.
Thank you.
You sent me recently. We were doing a launch of the Copywriting Academy, and you sent me the most generous gift. I mean, the message you sent me was incredibly kind of you, and you offered, if I ever wanted to talk, you'd talk more about what we've helped you to do, the story of how we came to be having this conversation, and then how, if in any way I've helped you at all. I think it's pretty sure bet I have. We wouldn't be having this call.
So it is funny. I remember, I don't know, it must have been a couple years ago. I found you on Facebook and I was like, I friended you, and I couldn't even believe that I got the friend request in. And I sent you a message and I was like, I just wanted to let you know, we've been in our online business for ages, and I always tell everybody that there's just like 2 courses that everybody needs to do, and you're one of them. Your course, the Copywriting Academy, has to be one of them. And without those skills, it's really hard to make it as a course creator or online business or anything like that, because that's so much of a big part of it. And I said, I met you in an elevator once at an event, and I was like, oh, hi. And I didn't want to bother you because, you're like a celebrity in our eyes, and then I said, hopefully someday I meet you again, but not stalking you in an elevator, because at that point that would be creepy. And you laughed and you thought that was funny. And so then more recently, I sent you a message again and said, I just have to tell you, we whipped out the Copywriting Academy again because we had to do something. We had to write something that we had never written before, which was a corporate proposal for a really big company that has a whole bunch of franchise locations. And we were like, we have no idea how to write a proposal. So we just decided, well, if the pastor formula works for everything else, it will probably work for this. So we whipped it out and we used the pastor formula to write this proposal for this big company to propose licenses for our program for all of their franchisees. So it would have been basically $120,000 proposal. And so we did, and we got it. And so I wanted to let you know that it works for everything. the
How
pastor
exciting.
formula and everything you learn.
That is so exciting.
Yeah. So it was just a big breakthrough for us, because dog training in that side of our business, dog trainers is a really, really, really small group of people. So, if you're teaching coaches or you're teaching all entrepreneurs, you kind of have a limitless ceiling. With dog trainers, there's just a small number in the world. So anything, any kind of 6-figure launch in dog trainers is a really, really big accomplishment. And it was only because of all the things that we've just been nerds about, which partly is all the copywriting things that we've learned from you.
Thank you. That's so kind of you to say that. I appreciate it very much. And it always, as a teacher and a trainer, it's always gratifying to have your students and people who've used your work come back and explain to you how it's benefited them. So I appreciate that so much as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah,
Now, I have a few
absolutely.
questions for you because of your curiosity about why people do the things they do and how that happens and the psychology of it and all the things you were saying,
Yeah.
all the things you were saying earlier. What is it about language? This is something I enjoy talking with people who are
Uh,
word nerds. What
mhm.
is it about language that makes it so powerful? And why is it so important to master language, not just in copy, but like when you're talking with someone or communicating on social media? What is it that's happening there?
Oh, that's such a fascinating question. I would say that it really is. There's so much of a kind of a divergence between the things that are going on in our own heads and how that comes out of our mouths or through our hands and or typing or writing, and how the words get heard. And being able to develop the skill of being able to hear your communication from the ears of the person listening and how it's going to process and the decisions it might trigger and all of that stuff is a skill and something that some of us are just naturally good at, but we don't know, we can't explain it, and some of us are not naturally good at it and have to study it. And it has like an effect on everything. It has an effect on everybody's. It has an effect on their feelings and on their immediate decisions and their future decisions, how they feel about themselves. I was actually just at an event this past weekend, and in talking to some of the people after the first day of the event, I picked up on some discouragement that some of them were having, and I was like, "There's this thing that needs to be said that is that would help this discouragement that a lot of the kind of the newer people in the online businesses, the way they're feeling, that they're kind of discouraged." And I ended up, despite my terror for raising my hand, when it was time to share kind of big takeaways the next day during the event, I raised my hand and I said this thing that I thought everybody needed to hear. And it was only because I had been listening to people about how they felt about their business and how discouraged they were and how they didn't think that they'd ever be able to get to this grand level of these stories that they've heard and all this stuff. So I kind of view it in my head kind of like a chess game, that if you say something and then the other person has to decide to do something, you have to kind of predict a couple steps ahead the way that's going to work and how it's going to go down. And it takes a lot of observation, a lot of listening, a lot of watching body language, a lot of empathy, and a lot of skill and study to be able to do that. And there's just always a big disconnect because the person speaking talks from their own experience and the way they think and the way they process information and the way they learn. And that might be very different from their audience or whoever they're speaking to, if they're talking to the people that they want to buy their stuff, or the people that are in an audience from stage or whatever it is. So making that connection, I think, fixes all kinds of problems, resolves all kinds of conflicts, makes people want the things that you're buying, gets you better friends, makes people like you and trust you. Like a million things are affected by words, and everything we do is, being a word nerd gives you a lot of skills in a lot of areas of life. So that's kind of my perspective on it.
I love that. Really, really, it is true. And I think that today, especially, this morning, I was struck by something. I'm not going to repeat it. Somebody posted something kind of incendiary on one of the social media networks that I'm on frequently, and started a big argument and lots of flaming back and forth. And I was going to say something. I was going to type something into that little box, and I thought, "No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to step back," because I realized nothing I said was going to contribute something positive to that particular conversation.
Hmm.
I think there's value in knowing when not to speak or when not to put your words in front of people.
Oh
But
yeah.
I I think language is so powerful at shaping our perception of reality,
Mm.
whether we're speaking it or listening to what somebody's saying, that we owe it to ourselves and to one another to be more careful with what we're saying. And I was making some notes in my journal this morning after I did not say anything in that one particular discussion. And I wrote, I have to paraphrase because I can't see it right now. I wrote something like this: "It's better not to speak at all unless what you're going to say expresses compassion, inspiration, or mutual benefit."
Yes, that is so true. It's so true. And it's hard to know sometimes where that is because part of our own kind of just our own indignation about something that's going wrong, or if you're the kind of personality type that loves to speak up for people who need to be advocated for. And, sometimes you just feel like there's something that just needs to be heard by somebody who might be listening, and it might not even be the person you're talking to. And hopefully someone overhears it and makes a difference to them. But yeah, it's hard to draw that line sometimes of, if I say something in this moment, there's really not that much benefit to anybody, except that I just get to honk the horn at somebody who cut me off, essentially
Right.
in life, that person just deserves to get yelled at, and
Right.
sometimes it just doesn't do any good. So I love that. I'm going to have to replay this and write that down. I love that quote.
Well, and I think that to further make your point you were just making, there are times when I think each of us has an opportunity to stand up for someone who needs to have someone stand up for them. When we
Hmm.
need to say clearly something that's happening right now is wrong. I know that. That is a responsibility we all have. But I think we don't have it as frequently as we think we do.
Yes, that's absolutely true.
What happens for me is I get angry or I get triggered or I get just pissed off and
Hmm.
I feel like, oh, well, I'm going to say something about that. And those are times when I have written the best copy I will ever regret. So I just recommend taking a deep breath and thinking about compassion and about inspiration and about mutual benefit. And if you think those through carefully, it carries to every kind of communication, including sales copy. Because the
Hmm.
best sales copy, you're using your compassion and empathy to see things from your client's point of view.
Yes.
You are inspiring them to take some action that'll help them whether they buy from you or not, and it's mutually beneficial.
Yes.
I think it's
Yes.
true in
Yes.
sales and politics, in religion, and all the other stuff we're not supposed to talk about.
Yes, yeah, and sometimes your own emotions like anger or feeling bad for someone who needs to be stood up for, or whatever other kind of emotion comes up that makes you just dying to write or say this thing. Sometimes it's good for yourself mentally to go ahead and write it, but not show it to anybody, just so you can look at it and process why you feel the way you feel and what triggers your own decisions and your own actions, and kind of what's deep seated in your own mind about, what kind of affects your own behavior. And then also read that from the lens of the people who might have seen it and might have read it and how they might have been affected, and whether or not they would have thought something different about you than what you intended. And all that kind of processing too, of just like how you end up recreating what you create and where that comes from, and then also how that will be perceived by somebody who doesn't know you. And those kinds of things I think are kind of fun exercises, because then the words get out of your head and you can go ahead and just vent to yourself on a piece of paper, but nobody sees it. And you can kind of get a little bit more self-awareness that way too, of how what things come out of you and where they come from, and how they would be viewed by somebody who did not see all of that and doesn't know your past and doesn't know your own traumas or your own emotions or your own personality type or whatever it is.
Oh, you're good. That's on point. I
Thank
had no
you.
idea this discussion was going to take this turn. How
I
fascinating.
can get philosophical about writing and personality types and brain stuff all day long. Like, yeah, I love it.
I picked that
It's
up right
fascinating.
away. And those are my kind of discussions. So
Yeah.
let's talk about this for a moment. I bet you have some thoughts about this. There's this thing, I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called AI,
Yep.
and lots of people are freaking out. Um, so I'm just wondering, do you have some thoughts on AI and what does that mean for us as humans?
Oh yeah, I it's funny because I think a lot of people are intrigued by it in terms of, that they're curious about how it can help them, and shortcuts that it can give them, and that kind of thing. And other people are nervous about it and just don't really know anything enough about how to use it, or it kind of just, they don't know how to train it to give them the information that they're really going for, how to ask it questions, and it kind of spits out some weird things. So I think if you don't know what you're doing with it, you can just create a more robotic version of bad copy. That you have to know when it spits something out if it's good. And so you still have to have the skills of knowing whether or not something is good words, if it's going to work, and the kind of effect it'll have on the reader. Otherwise, it's useless. All it really, I think what it's great for is that if you can, like, your clarity scribe is awesome because it's pre-trained, and then that gives you a much closer starting point of, closer to good. And, so even if you don't know what you're doing, you're much better off with the shortcuts that you get from that. But the skills of just kind of knowing how your words are going to be read and how they're going to be perceived, and the decisions that will be made from it, more likely, all that stuff is just as important. So that's where I love how in your program you have the skills. You learn how to write and how the words are heard and all those psychological things. And you also get the shortcut, the AI. And I think that's the perfect combination, because if you're missing either one, everything just takes longer. And that's what I love using AI for, is just, it doesn't matter how great you are with words. You're going to get stuck sometimes. You're just going to not know. I hate coming up with titles for master classes or webinars or products. That is one of the creative areas that I just do not enjoy. I don't like naming things. So I use AI for things like that, for ideas. So I always talk about the difference between knowledge and ideas. Knowledge is the stuff that you need and you have to get. Ideas are just infinite. So you can listen to something that you already know. Like, I'll re-listen to a program that I have that I've heard 1,000 times, and I'll get new ideas from it. It's stuff that I already know. I'm not getting necessarily new knowledge, but there's always new ideas, and you can use AI for that part of it. Just more ideas.
Absolutely. And you're a different person from day to day and from month to month and year to year. Hopefully we learned something in the last couple of years.
Yes. And yeah, you can always learn new things too. But even if it's the same stuff that you technically already know, you can always just get new things out of it, new perspective. Every time you hear it, you just hear it differently. And so the new ideas are always great. And that's what I personally like using AI for, is just to get things flowing when I'm stuck.
I think that's a great use for that technology. So tell me a little bit about your business today. What are you doing? What projects have you excited?
Oh man. So I, as I mentioned, a lot of my audience is professional dog trainers. So I run makeitasadogtrainer.com, and I've done that for almost 12 years now. So that's been amazing and such a fun ride, because dog trainers are trying to change the world and their way of helping people with their animals. Sorry, there's a cockatoo. I live in Australia right now, and there's a cockatoo that's screaming his head off right outside my door, like a wild one. And so I don't know if you can hear it, but he's quite distracting. So I love helping them. I have a launch coming up for them pretty soon, but I also have some other projects for the marketing psychology side of things and helping people really with understanding their audience more deeply. And that's been something that I've been tempted to do and been kind of on the back burner for a very long time. And because of a lot of changes in the business and life and some time off that I was forced to take last year, which is a whole other story, all of these things have kind of culminated in me having the mental space and time and ability to start working on that project. That I just went to, like I said, an event last weekend, and I was around a bunch of people in a bunch of different niches and different online businesses. And everybody was like, oh man, I really need help with that. There's so many things that are confusing to me about my audience. And someone had come up to me after I said something in the microphone for like 1 minute and said something about how I have a tendency for making people feel good about themselves. And that's something that coaches and other people and other service businesses could really use. And so I feel like kind of there's a lot of exciting new projects that will be coming out of that side of my my obsessive interest in human behavior. But yeah, I have 3 kids. They're homeschooled, and we travel the world with them. Like I said, we're in Australia right now, and have like a truly amazing, simple and fun life because of the online business and the things that we've learned from you and a couple other people that have helped make that possible. So that's kind of what's going on right now.
Wow. That sounds like not a busy life. It sounds like a full life.
It's full for sure. Yeah.
And the joy that you have, I can see, just comes through. The vibes even come through between Australia and the Pacific Northwest. So those are powerful vibes. I just want to thank you so much. How do people get in touch with you or find if they're interested in seeing what you're doing, what you're working on, or if they want to make it as a dog trainer, they just go to makeitasadogtrainer.com?
Yeah. And then for the people nerd side of things, that would be whypeopledostuff.com.
What a great domain name. Whypeopledostuff.com.
Yeah, it fits my personality. I use the word stuff a lot.
I love that. Well, I hope this is one of many more conversations to come. You are
Me too.
fascinating. You're fun. I love your energy. And we'll speak again soon, I'm sure.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I would love to anytime. I'm always down for a psychology conversation whenever you want.